What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe.
The Saints are being linked now in the first round to a player that initially I did not want them to draft, but now I am all in on this. So yesterday we had Nick Underhill on, and he mentioned that he believes right now the Saints are kind of leaning one of two ways. It's either Ashton Jeanty or Tyler Warren. Well, the Sporting News, they put out their mock draft yesterday. They also have the New Orleans Saints selecting Penn State tight end Tyler Warren at number 9. There's a lot of smoke around this right now. He's about as complete of a tight end as it gets. This makes a ton of sense because of your current tight end situation. Initially, I was like, no, you got to go D-line, maybe a receiver on the outside. I am perfectly fine with going Tyler Warren. As a matter of fact, I'd be thrilled with it. Look at your tight end room from a year ago. Juwan Johnson is set to become a free agent. Do you really want to re-sign him? I don't know. I mean, if the price is right, but you're in cap hell. You can't really pay anybody all that much. Foster Moreau is entering the final year of his deal. And look, both of these guys, they've been good players. They haven't been great. I mean, they've been, solid NFL tight ends, but how much are you willing to spend or overspend to keep either of those guys? I love Foster Moreau. He's an LSU guy, but I mean, look, he's not a top-tier NFL tight end, and that's perfectly fine. But you have the ability to get one in the upcoming NFL draft. Look, if you look at each of them's numbers, what they did this past season. Juwan Johnson, 50 catches, 548 yards, 3 touchdowns. Good season. Foster Moreau, similar. 32 catches, 413 yards, 5 touchdowns. Another solid season. Together, they make a really solid tight end. However, you got to get under the cap number somehow. If you let Juwan Johnson walk, even if you let Foster Moreau play out the final year of his deal, which I'm not sure you do, he could become a cap casualty because you've got to get under that number. Let's say you do cut Foster Moreau. So let's say you don't re-sign Juwan Johnson and you release Foster Moreau to get under the cap. All you're left with now is Taysom Hill, who is really not a pure tight end. I mean, Taysom Hill can make things happen for you really regardless of where he's at on the football field, but he's not that pure traditional tight end really in any sense of the word. Enter Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is 6'6", 250 pounds. And the resume speaks for itself. This past season, he played in 16 games. He caught 104 passes for 1,233 yards and 8 touchdowns. 11.5 yards per reception. He also ran the ball 218 yards, 4 touchdowns. Not done. He completed 3 of 6 passes for 35 yards and a touchdown. He can do a little bit of everything. That makes a lot of sense because Taysom Hill's getting older. He's coming off of an injury. He's about to be 35. We know the large cap hit he has, and we've talked about it. You probably can't trade Taysom Hill because I don't really know how good his trade value would be at this point. Not only can Tyler Warren slide in there and potentially be your starting tight end for the next decade, in the immediate future, he can take over that Taysom Hill role. Now, is he going to be Taysom Hill? Probably not. He's not as fast as Taysom. He's not quite as versatile as Taysom, but he's done a lot of those things in college. We saw him at Penn State line up in the quarterback position, take the direct snap, quarterback sneak it. I mentioned he completed 3 passes this year. He had 26 carries at Penn State this past season. And that doesn't even scratch the surface on what he can do as a tight end as far as a receiver and a blocker. I think he's a complete player. But also, this is a very deep tight end class, I believe. Mason Taylor could be there in the 3rd round. Gunnar Helm could be there in the 3rd round. A little bit later on, if you want to grab a tight end late, I get that he played at Bowling Green, but Harold Fannin could be there. Not necessarily a starter year 1. That's if you keep a guy like Foster Moreau. So there's a lot of options, but if you want a guy who is plug and play day 1, we want him to be our every down starting tight end, Tyler Warren's that guy. And I wouldn't hate it. I think Mason Taylor can do it. I think Gunnar Helm can do it. And you can say, okay, well, that may be the best option because you could wait for rounds 2 and 3. Yeah, but you can't promise that they're going to be there. Somebody could always reach and fall in love with these guys and grab them before anybody projects them to go off the board. then you're just sitting there with no tight end. At 9 overall, if Tyler Warren is there, I'm not saying it's the Saints' biggest need, but it would be really, really hard to pass up on a player of his caliber. Let's say you didn't grab Tyler Warren, though. Let's say you went Tedero McMillan, or you went somewhere on the defensive line, an edge rusher. Could you trade for a tight end? There's a few names out there. But again, they have to be cheap options because you still have to get under that cap number. I looked at a few teams that have not one but two starting caliber tight ends. First one I want to look at is the Green Bay Packers with Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave was a second-round pick coming out of Oregon State. He is 6'6". He is 255 pounds. He has the body to be an every down tight end. He's only 24 years old. Now, if you remember, 2 years ago when he was drafted, Green Bay also took Tucker Kraft in the same class. They took two tight ends in the same draft, 1 round apart. Musgrave went in the second, Kraft went in the third. Now, in 2023, Luke Musgrave looked like he could be an every down tight end. 34 receptions, 354 yards. He had a touchdown, and him and Tucker Kraft kind of shared time. But Tucker Kraft exploded this year. He was one of the best tight ends in the NFL. So what happened? 2023 to 2024. I mentioned in 2023, 34 catches, 352 yards. Last year, he was in and out of the lineup because of injury, but he also got passed up because of Tucker Kraft. Luke Musgrave only played in 7 games, started 3 of them. 7 catches, 45 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a guy that is talented. You've seen him be able to give you some production at the tight end position as a rookie. He's also on a second-round rookie contract, which does one thing. It makes him affordable. A productive player in a good offense who's splitting time, who wants to be a full-time tight end. You need a every down tight end, and he's affordable. He's going to make, $1.5 million, $2 million next year? And he's got 2 years left on his rookie deal, so you can get him for 2 years at that price, at about $1.5 million, $2 million. The other guy I want to look at is Michael Mayer for the Raiders. You guys remember Michael Mayer. He was the last Brian Kelly tight end at Notre Dame. 6'4", 265 pounds. There was rumors that he was going to be the first tight end off the board in 2023. Now, he wasn't. He fell to the second round. Dalton Kincaid was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in round 1. He falls to round 2. He was an early round 2 pick. As a rookie, pretty solid numbers. 27 catches, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. But then a man by the name of Brock Bowers shows up in 2024. One of the best tight end prospects, if not the best tight end prospect we have ever seen. Luke Musgrave falls out of favor a little bit. He only played in 8 games. He played in 11 games. He had 8 starts. 21 catches, 156 yards. Very similar to Luke Musgrave. A talented player who was a high draft pick, who had a lot of hype around him coming out of college, who just kind of fell out of favor for whatever reason to the other tight end. Tucker Kraft passed him up, and Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers. He's a unicorn. He literally had the best rookie tight end season we have ever seen. He set the record for rookie tight ends for receptions in a season. Brock Bowers is incredible. Brock Bowers is the type of tight end that every NFL team wants. That doesn't make Michael Mayer any less of a player. And again, a lot like Luke Musgrave, he's a second-round pick. He's in the second year of a 4-year rookie deal. You'll pay him about $1.5 million, $2 million a year. Both of those guys, solid options. They're big enough to be a blocking tight end. They've shown the ability to catch the ball. They're both 24, 25 years old, and they're both really cheap. So, again, I am all for drafting a guy like a Tyler Warren at 9 overall because I think he's that talented. If you don't, though, you have some options, but you're going to have to trade for one because you're going to pay Foster Moreau a little bit more than maybe he's worth at this point, and it's not a very good free agent market in terms of tight ends. You're going to have to trade for somebody, but what can you get for Luke Musgrave, Michael Mayer? 5th-round pick? I'd do that. I'd do that all day long. I think either one of those guys would be really solid options for the Saints if they do not draft Tyler Warren, which at this point I am fully endorsing. Another mock draft came out. This one was from Zierlein at NFL Network, Kevin Zierlein. He has the Saints taking Shamar Stewart in round 1. Shamar Stewart is a good player, but I just don't think you can do that in round one. Look, Shamar Stewart is a 291-pound defensive lineman, so he has versatility to play inside and outside. If you go to that 3-4, that could help you because that end's going to crash down a little bit. So scheme-wise, he could be a fit. I just think 9 overall is a bit of a reach for this guy. I think there's a lot of good pass rushers, similar to the tight end class. I just mentioned there's some tight ends in rounds 2 and 3 that could really make an impact for you. I think it's the same way with defensive line. I think that you can get a guy with maybe a little bit better numbers who might be there a little bit later. Look, Shamar Stewart, big, strong, run stuffer. Walter Nolan could be there in round 2. Walter Nolan had 62 tackles, 26 tackles for a loss, and 11.5 sacks at Ole Miss. For reference, at Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart, 65 tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, just 4.5 sacks. So Walter Nolan, same conference, basically the same position, better numbers. And you could maybe get him in the second round. What about Deion Walker? He's a guy from Kentucky who has actually been mocked to the Saints numerous times in the second round. Now, he's a guy that is going to play defensive tackle. He doesn't really have quite the versatility of a Shamar Stewart or a Walter Nolan who can maybe kick outside if you need to. Deion Walker is a large human being, 6'7", 240 pounds. He had 10 sacks in 3 years at Kentucky in the perimeter, or in the interior of the defensive line. Talk about Brian Bresee. We've seen flashes, want to see a little bit more consistency, but you need somebody next to a Brian Bresee. How about a big, giant space filler at 6'7", 240 pounds, who was actually really productive at rushing the passer from the interior? Again, 10 sacks, 3 years at Kentucky. I don't mind Shamar Stewart so much as a prospect. I just think at 9 overall, you can't take him. There might be better options later. I think, look, again, defensive tackle, defensive end, whatever you're looking for, there's better options. I mentioned most of those guys who are primarily interior guys but can play on the edge as well. If you're looking for an edge guy, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, he could be there around 2. When we talk about Braden Swinson all the time as maybe a round 3 pick, there's options out there. You don't need to necessarily reach for a guy at 9 overall like Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart, solid player. I think he has a lot of potential. I just don't know if you can draft him in 9 overall. But again, going back to Tyler Warren, the more and more I hear about him being mocked to the New Orleans Saints at 9 overall, the more I fall in love with. I think that is an excellent pick. I think at this point, I would actually prefer him over Ashton Jeanty because you have a bigger need at tight end than maybe you do at running back. And the Saints did release Jamal Williams yesterday. What can you get from Kendre Miller? But look, you just extended Alvin Kamara. And I get it, Kamara's not quite the player that he was, but how good is your offensive line going to be to support a player like Ashton Jeanty anyways? Jeanty made up for a lot at Boise State. I mean, his offensive line wasn't great there, but the Saints don't exactly have the most stout offensive line. As good as Saquon Barkley was this past year, there's 2,000 yards. A lot of that's on the guys up front. It's because Philadelphia Eagles have the best offensive line in the NFL. James Cook, he had a breakout year. Yeah, Buffalo Bills, top 5 offensive line in the NFL. I love Ashton Jeanty. I think he's a heck of a player. I don't know how much impact he's going to make year 1 with this offensive line. Tyler Warren could go in day 1, be your everyday starter at tight end, which is a big need for this team.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.